911, where's your emergency?
Someone is a robber at a pawn shop.
Someone's robbing the pawn shop?
And my parents got shot.
Where's the robber?
He's right here right now.
Where are your parents?
They're dead on the ground. Come here quickly because I'm afraid.
In January 2013, in the heart of Kentucky, in the small town of Danville, a 911 call by a 9-year-old boy, Andrew Hockensmith, shook the whole community. Everyone was shocked by an unthinkable crime, a crime that would haunt its residents for years to come. So, what happened that day to Andrew and his family? Let's delve into this video to uncover the truth about what had really happened to the Hockensmith family. Michael Hockensmith, a 35-year-old former priest and a pawn shop manager whose duties increased since he had to take over the pawn shop in its entirety when the former owner fell sick. While Michael was no longer in the clergy, he had always been an upstanding individual. He was able to get along with people and was happy to offer his assistance to them. He married Angela, who was his very first love, and everybody adored her for her angelic qualities. Michael literally worshipped the ground she walked on. They owned a small pawn shop, ABC Gold, games and more, located on the outskirts of Danville. For them, the shop was more than just a business. It was a way to build a future for their young family. Mike and Angela had 2 children, a 9-year-old son and a 14-month-old daughter. And, like any young parents, they dreamed of giving their kids a stable, loving home. But that dream came to a brutal end on the morning of January 9th, 2013. It was just another Wednesday morning. Mike and Angela opened their shop early, as they always did, ready to greet their regular customers. Their kids were with them that day, which was common for their family-run business. While Mike focused on the day's inventory, Angela kept an eye on the children. Around 9:15 a.m., a man walked into the store. He looked like any other customer, but he wasn't there to make any purchase. He was armed, and his intentions were clear. He was there to rob the place. But what happened next was a scene of terror. A man pulled out a gun and shot Mike and Angela without hesitation. They were killed instantly. Also present in the shop was Daniel P. Smith, a family friend and customer who had come to conduct some business. He was also shot down. The children, just a few feet away from the chaos, somehow escaped without physical injuries. However, they witnessed the entire horrific event, a trauma that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Fortunately, their son, 9-year-old Andrew, somehow managed to make a desperate call to 911. His voice shook as he informed the operator that his parents had been shot. The call, filled with fear and confusion, would become a crucial piece of evidence in what would soon turn into one of Kentucky's most infamous murder cases. 6 minutes after the phone call, police officers arrived at the scene of the crime. When they entered the building, their attention was immediately drawn to a large, bloody trail, which led them to Michael Hockensmith. Moments later, they found his 38-year-old wife, Angie, and on the other side of the counter, they discovered the third victim of the crime, 60-year-old broker Dan Smith. All 3 victims had gunshot wounds to the head and torso. A few minutes later, officers found Andrew Hockensmith and his little sister Naomi hiding in a closet. The officers' accounts indicated the unimaginable horror these young children had endured. And all of a sudden, the 9-year-old boy and his 14-month-old sister were left orphaned, having lost both parents in this tragic event. Upon examining the crime scene, police found 14.22 caliber shell casings and 3 intact bullets, along with a briefcase that belonged to Dan Smith. Danville was stunned. The thought that such a horrific crime could occur in their town, particularly to a family so beloved by the community, was almost beyond belief. As news of the murders spread, the police quickly began their investigation. There were no immediate suspects and no apparent motive for the killings, leaving the small town community to wonder, who could do something like this? As investigators continued their work, they uncovered more than they had expected. The murders were not a random act of violence. They were part of a calculated, deliberate crime, and the person responsible was someone the town was familiar with. Days after the murders, police arrested Kenneth Allen Keith, a local pastor. To those who knew him, the arrest was shocking. Kenneth Keith wasn't just a man of faith, he was a community leader. As the pastor of Main Street Baptist Church in nearby Burnside, he was well known and respected. But investigators uncovered a far darker side to Keith, one driven by greed and desperation. In the months leading up to the murders, Kenneth Keith had fallen on hard times. He had been struggling financially, and his once thriving church had seen a decline in membership and donations. In an attempt to stay afloat, Keith had turned to selling gold, and it was through this business that he first crossed paths with the Hockensmiths. Over time, he became a regular customer at their pawn shop, selling gold and other items to make ends meet. But as his financial troubles mounted, so did his desperation. Investigators discovered that Keith had become increasingly resentful of the Hockensmiths, who he believed had cheated him on previous gold transactions. In his mind, they were standing between him and the money he needed to save his church and his lifestyle. And so, on that fateful morning, Keith walked into ABC Gold, Games and more, armed with a gun and a twisted sense of justification. The evidence against Keith quickly began to pile up. Ballistics tests linked the bullets from the crime scene to a gun that Keith owned. Security footage from a nearby business placed him near the pawn shop on the morning of the murders. And most damning of all, his financial records showed a man on the brink of collapse. A man who, in the eyes of investigators, was desperate enough to kill. In September 2013, Kenneth Allen Keith was formally charged with 3 counts of murder, one for each of the lives he had taken that January morning. His trial became a media sensation, with reporters and cameras descending on Danville to cover the case. The town, still reeling from the murders, now had to confront the painful reality that one of their own, a trusted pastor, was capable of such violence. During the trial, prosecutors laid out their case in meticulous detail. They described how Keith's financial desperation had driven him to commit murder, how he had planned the robbery in an attempt to steal from the Hockensmiths, and how, when things didn't go as planned, he had decided to kill them rather than leave witnesses behind. Keith's defence team, meanwhile, argued that the evidence was circumstantial. They tried to paint an alternative theory that someone else had committed the crime, and that Keith had been wrongly accused. But the jury wasn't convinced. After days of testimony and deliberation, they returned with a guilty verdict on all 3 counts of murder. In 2016, Kenneth Allen Keith was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the town of Danville, the verdict brought some measure of closure. But for the Hockensmith family, and especially for the 2 children who had lost both their parents in an instant, the pain would never fully heal. In the years since the murders, the children have been cared for by family members, but the trauma of that day is something they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. The murders also left a lasting impact on the community, which had to come to terms with the fact that someone they had trusted, a man who had stood in the pulpit and preached about love and forgiveness, was capable of such brutality. For many in Danville, the betrayal was almost as devastating as the crime itself. The Hockensmith family murders remain one of the most tragic events in Kentucky's recent history. A family torn apart by greed and violence, a community betrayed by a man who was supposed to lead them, and 2 young children who were forced to grow up far too quickly. In the aftermath of such violence, we are left to ask, how could this happen? What drives someone to commit such a heinous act? Comment down below your viewpoint and let us know what your take on this case is. And if you like our true crime-based video content, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more upcoming videos.